To be honest, after reading the book Friday's Revenge, Israel's Revenge, a number of these spiritual beings' revenge on their partners, I was astounded because in actual fact Jesus is Zeus, and idol worship does happen. For example, things like Nemesis Now theories and dragon statues and Picasso's artwork or Cabela's artwork or a number of different artists had powers according to certain books, such as whatever they created on paper, if they were blindfolded, they could physically see inside of their friends. It's really just a parlour trick. And they could also do things like if they created, say, a skeleton out of paper mache or a clock out of paper mache, they could possess the object and appear as an imposter. According to the Bible, and there are many Bibles, and the truth of the Jehovah's Witnesses is the Bible is a book called Deuteronomy, something that was a huge court case in the 90s. On Cyrus, there was Lucifer, who was married to Delta. There was Gabrielle, who was married to Joan of Arc and her family. There was Lady Faith, who was married to Archangel Michael. Medusa was married to Hemlock. Zedekiel was married to Hecate. Azrael was married to Friday. Zeus had married Ava Maria. And the list goes on and on. Sandalphon was with Lady Hope. And during the times of the Egyptians, these people were sent from all around the world to free slaves and uplift the energy fields and teach them knowledge from other planets as summoned by the pharaohs. In fact, it was Fausia and Gabrielle, who were together for a time, that liberated the slaves together, and it was supposedly Moses, which is just a watered down story of the real event of the Exodus, which is when Fausia jumped from a castle and they believed the world was coming to an end because the queen had died. So they fled, somehow crossing the Nile. The same people that fled Egypt were Jewish, and Adolf Hitler was a spirit in Greek mythology called Apollo, who believed it was sacred to eat animals. And in his time as the leader of the world, during his regime, as also King of Mercury, as mentioned in another book, Mercury being Germany, it was a sacrifice for money, really. And the concentration camps were asylums and sanatoriums and hospitals and prisons that he wasn't responsible for because they were just really run down from people being too poor to be able to fund what they were building. Supposedly, churches such as the Church of St. Michael and the island of St. Michael believe St. Michael to be Jesus. In places like Constantinople, they believe Israel with Jesus, in places like the outskirts of India, they believe Gabriel is Jesus. In actual fact, Jesus is Zeus, God, and he has a hierarchy of angels that are closest to him based on how enlightened they are. It's not about how well they worship or what they do or don't do. It's about how much knowledge they gain from being travellers of worlds. Some of the more enlightened angels are seraphim, and it means they can help God, or Zeus is another name for the creator, to conduct the way planets move around each other, new suns and moons being created. Basically, Zeus is a grand wizard, not a tyrant, is something to make clear. This rise in psychiatry is something to do with industrialism and science, because what they really believe is the world is so polluted and so mistreated. These, what New Zealanders call greenies, have come up with an idea to keep people alive through and different forms of medication, because what they're really doing is not only keeping them alive, it's how they turn them to super soldiers. And I don't mean to be a whistleblower, but as a series of events I've worked out, they released diseases, they sent them to hospitals and sanitariums and asylums and prisons where they were safe, supposedly. Then they came up with cures to turn them into super soldiers, and now that there's Germany going to war, keeping people divided and conquered through Deuteronomy or Catholicism is how they're ushering the Third World War, which will lead to people trying to escape by getting to a different planet through self-injury, which keeps the process rolling, all of which is there to create culling of the population, because I believe there's far too many people and vaccines and schools and unawareness of, or even respect of, married people are targets for the next 15 years to be sent to these places, all of which Deuteronomy stands for. It's not a good time to be a Catholic, it's not a good time to be a Jehovah's Witness, and it's not a good time to be a site nurse or a patient. However, that was the Fourth Reich, according to Germany, maybe even the Fifth Reich, because the One World Government has been in control for a long time, and it's the United Nations. And as somebody who works for the United Nations, we have to allow for people to go through the process of institutionalisation, because what really happened was there were so many abandoned institutions, so many abandoned hospitals, so many abandoned asylums, discovered through urban exploring that to get the economy back up and running, they have to repossess and release these buildings through government agencies. Furthermore, the whole conquer and divide thing over Deuteronomy or Catholicism is actually just to make these people educated, because they're hoping that if they go through a series of rebukes, they will gather new information. And as for things like injections and medicine and so on, it's because what a building is extremely powerful, really, because as I've noticed in my studies, I'm obsessed with moving houses because I personally believe in every house history repeats. Every house. It may not be the same people, but you can expect history and the power and the emotions and the way that these people live to continue through another group of people. And what my suggestion is expand your knowledge base. Read things like Egyptian texts, Hebrew texts. It doesn't just have to be about the Bible or the fight over whether Israel or Zeus or Sandalphon or Gabriel or Chemuel or Michael or Adam or even Oberon or Odin or any of the gods fighting to be known as Jesus. Because I'll get to how the church works in a second. You need to expand your knowledge base, even if it's scary, even if you think it's a sin. You have to understand knowledge is power. If you're aware, you're empowered. Reading books about things like angels, things like mysticism, things like numerology, things like astrology, palmistry, are not even truly divine. Because what actually is divine is things like creating a portrait of the family and selling it to an art gallery according to archangels, or travelling to Egypt and visiting Pharaoh's tombs, for example. And the other thing you have to do is be polite. As difficult as it sounds, anyone else going through calling people and getting the same person and it's a government agency, you can expect that because you've been tied by the same brush of whatever conquer and divide they're causing, and the latest thing you've been told to is save as much money as possible. In fact, if you are a student, know what you're entitled to. If you're a patient, know what you're entitled to. The government pays the people, the regional council, the DCC, the Auckland Council, the Wellington Council. There are people other than just charities. There are certain government agencies in New Zealand, such as IID, where you can be paid for certain things. And my other advice is, if you're in a house, don't move out, because odds are your fate will change and you'll be starting from scratch. My other advice is, keep within your means. People are desperate for money because all money is being spent on reopening old buildings. And because most of these old buildings were there around the late or early 19th century, the history of these places, there was a lot of fighting. So something like being aware of military or self-defense action and keeping in touch with a detective or defending yourself in court as best to your ability, and identifying imposters are essential, absolutely essential. And if you do want to spend leisure time, my advice is get a real estate degree or a law degree or something you can be self-employed with, and go to the suburbs and walk down a completely random street and you may find 15 abandoned houses. You may find an abandoned church, you may find an abandoned hospital, you may find a number of interesting things. The reason they're so desperate to reopen these places is they believe that the staff have all lost their job and left people inside, which is what Egyptian texts would call liberational energy, just caring for money and not people. And once they have successfully reopened all these buildings that were closed during the 70s for not being up to standard or dangerous or because of court cases, that I can explain by saying the concrete divide is basically, if you get into a fight with someone over your beliefs, if you sue them, if you marry them for money, if you live together in sin, the German government will join with the United Nations, and what you'll see happen is it will be new people doing old things. There won't be war in an obvious way. It will be people fighting over what they don't understand. Because people that fight over what they don't understand are people that society does away with, as you would expect in a court case. So it's a way of finding people to be sent to be institutionalized. For example, the Otago University, one of the world's leading universities, has completely new ownership, and you can expect history will repeat, but whoever goes to that school, it will be a complete lack of freedom, because unless they are open-minded, well-to-do, honest, respectful, and quiet, you'll find your life can easily become a completely different life living somewhere like a hospital or an asylum. In fact, there are so many abandoned buildings. What they'll realise is they don't need to kill the population, because how they'll kill the population is institutionalisation, by sending people to abandoned buildings to live under authority of doctors or nurses, or just a completely different change in fate is what you can expect, because the spiritual traits of the 90s generation and their children is a lot of them in their past lives were hopelessly involved with drugs or selling drugs or cartels or banking or any number of new society legally put forward ideas from CEOs. And because I haven't completed their karmic understanding or their karmic retributions or their karmic awareness, they're not becoming more intelligent. And the purpose of our lives is to gain knowledge of each other, and they're all swept up in cults or churches or articles, even on the internet. So really we're repeating what each other says, which is why they come up with something like institutionalisation, to send maybe 50,000 to an asylum that nobody's ever heard of is going to be common, because it's economic. And unless you're spiritually aware, and abiding by the rules of society at the same time, and you appreciate what the government does for you, and you don't blame individuals or even their situations, you just look at somebody as if they were a client without any bias. For a start, these are things we're supposed to know as teenagers, but we're just not understanding these new principles of the coming era. Because I believe the coming era will bring a lot of children, and a lot of new creations, and a lot of women's rights, and a lot of imprisonment for entertainers, and a lot of new medicines. So Deuteronomy is a religion, really now. So is Catholicism, and it's failing, according to most of them, because anyone that has beliefs about angels and devils are just immature, because anyone can be good and anyone can be bad, because even something as simple as making coffee or having a cigarette or staying at home or going to sleep is all just a series of decisions. You can choose to marry one person, you can choose to marry another, and the real reason they will institutionalize people by reopening things that people don't even know exist yet is because people have far too much freedom. The budget was stolen, for example. And because the budget has been stolen, which was all hushed up, you can expect that we'll all just have a time of it, because if they can't find a person that has committed atrocities, they just put everyone away according to American rules. The other reason is polyamory is a disaster. So is monogamy. I'll explain it. The church honours the priest. Most women in a commune believe their husband is Jesus. And there's always a new Jesus, and there's many Jesuses. So, when I was at school, I thought the priest was Jesus, because it's what we're supposed to believe. And then you end up living together. He has a wife, and he's probably in possession. Could be true, could not be true. It depends on the individual and if you've been married. But the actual only way to ever get married is two people that have never been married before. Same things, like it's forever, I love you, so on and so on. And what a harem really is an extended law of marriage. So it means it's the same two people in disguise. And they do this because, according to the Bible, that's what it means by fill the earth. And as you can imagine, because of conflicts around the world, murder is huge. So those children return to their family lines, and women in harems need to marry someone that's never been married before. So the purpose of Deuteronomy is for them to marry someone that has never been married before. And the purpose of Catholicism is to keep safe the educated, because you'll find within 15 to 55 years, only educated people have any freedom. And everyone has a life purpose, and everyone is important. But when it comes to something like recreating a sanitarium from the late 1920s, complete with a train station and all the rest of it, you can expect you won't enjoy it. Because according to history, Germany lost the war, and now we're all safe. So, but around the world, each history book is completely different. And the importance of being educated is something as simple as going to the libraries or getting a coffee with a friend, which is actually rather liberating compared to what people actually do go through in places built in the 1920s or 1930s, because the whole world went to war, and all the things they've built still exist. So whoever holds the lease to that building, say your prayers for the coming industrialism and entrapment that institutionalization brings, because they're actually not even in control of themselves. They repeat history, and honestly, a person compared to something like a Taj Mahal is the Taj Mahal pulling the strings. Same with tombs and pharaohs and with all of it. So that's why there's suddenly so much crime, and it will be swept under the rug. There are jails, there are factories, there are entire abandoned industrial areas of things that the government wants people to do something with. And recently, as it's actually been cryptocurrency, and a huge number of investors, especially young investors, they have enough money to bring the world back to life. And wherever you live in the world, I would say be very careful, because, for example, I live in a place that was designed to be safe for people, from each other and from the world, and they honestly believe war is around the corner, and they honestly believe we're already dead and they're keeping us alive, which is the exact same beliefs that were held in the 1920s in their building. So it's strange to think that all these inventions like hydraulic cars or electric cars or televisions or newspapers or clothes just can't disprove what these people believe. Because when you live somewhere, you change to fit the history of the house, and the history of the house repeats, and you end up reliving some sort of karmic lesson until you realise you actually have to do more for each other. And you can't just think that person's different or that person is strange, hurt him, or the dog's barking, kicking, because violence is huge. Okay, it's gangs of violence and money and all these things that have happened, and neo-Nazis still exist, and there are thousands upon thousands of gangs, and thousands upon thousands of charities, and thousands upon thousands of hospitals, slums, factories, businesses, parking lots, garages. What I'm saying is, they're entire abandoned cities, and because of how much money the one world government and whoever signs up with the United Nations, you'll find things like convents as well, churches run by convents, churches run by people who read around me. It all exists, and it's not particularly good, but I like to think that with enlightenment and knowledge, we could arise to the occasion. However, the truth of it is, life is location, because if I was near like Las Vegas and then we opened a casino, I would walk out with $1,000 and buy a car and travel with a friend to smoke weed in a parking lot. Instead, because you're opening a covenant somewhere like Melbourne or prison, you'll find that options all depend on the buildings of the past. And the way that the church works is they let the clever ones go as long as there's consequences, and they all believe the most well-fed, attractive because he has money, priest or person is arguably Jesus. And there are people out there who think Danny Field and Cradle Field is Jesus. There are people out there who think the lead singer of Sega is Jesus. There are people out there who think their husband, who they've never met, is Jesus. It's a very, very convincing Bible. Most of the ones that I've read, and honestly, what could be more convincing than they crucified God and he died, so now we can't. The whole purpose of it is to be married. Whether you're in a group and you're married to a wealthy man who mistreats his wife because she works and he's into Deuteronomy, and you think it's Jesus' way that I live my life, it's just not realistic that Jesus, J. Christ, that there's only one of them. It's how it works is a lot like breeding with Persians. They find a woman who's intelligent and able and convince them that they have to be Christian. And what modern Christians believe is completely different to what Christianity used to be, which is why I fear for the institutions being brought back to life. And castles also, you can expect, you could go over and exploring and find a castle, yes. The fact is, whoever has money, you can expect will look good. Their husband, because of laws, even better. But the fact is, even if I was Jesus, or married to Jesus, and there's one Jesus in the whole world, it's just not true. Because it's a lifestyle. Basically, we're treating Jesus like Bachelor. And Delphion and Zeus and all these people, there is a heaven, and these people are all gods and goddesses, according to paganism. Which means sent here to read books. Not just one book either. And what they're meant to do is be married, have children, entertain their friends, and have church fellowships and grants and bank accounts and so on and so on. If I didn't have money and my partner had no money whatsoever, if we didn't have bank accounts, nobody would think he's Jesus. It's because we are traded to people with money. And right now I can imagine whoever owns or was Billy Rello or Ezekiel or the owner of Virgin Airlines, he has wives, okay? And yes, Muslims think yes, Jesus, because it's what people with money do. They don't even necessarily want to. However, what I am, according to God, is a fallen angel or a seraphim or some deity, right? And everyone is. And an artist. Now, because I live with one of my employers and I'm very active and I don't do it for money, I do it because I get bored easily and my main sign is Gemini and my north sign is Scorpio. Sometimes I look really attractive and other times I just look terrible. So you can imagine it all depends on the stars, is why we look different when we look different and why we want to change our hair and our clothes and our makeup. Even things as simple as finances are guided by the stars. It all depends on your astrological signs and the moons and stars and phases of the planet, which is a galaxy, circling around itself. Because honestly, a person compared to the planet, you might think it's just, there's no comparison, to be honest. And I'm not saying don't believe in self-importance, but really, what am I compared to the moon or Jupiter and just a star? You know, so what it depends on, according to recent astrology, is relationships. If you can tolerate people with differences, you'll be rewarded. But so also will you be if you are diligent. Because diligent in corporations will also rule. And now it seems to be people with relationships who either are or aren't legally even allowed in the country are all just going to be bias statements. It's not a good time to invest. And ever since Apple crashed, you'll find people just work for nothing. There's no unions anymore. There's no guarantee anyone will get anything. Okay? At all when this happens. And it is all bias, and you can expect to be fighting for what you already have in 2 weeks' time. But you don't necessarily need to have these things, because you'll spend them on positions that people want, and if you get robbed, you'll be back to square one, which is the latest phase of new gangs, to steal from the poor. No more Robin Hood robbing the rich. It's too difficult. They just steal from the poor, okay? As the other side of that phase in astrology, as Scorpio moves to Taurus. And strangely enough, the way the church works is an ordained priest has to have more than one wife, has to study religious things and send women to other priest houses. And my confession is, as I worked for Alchemy Gothic, some of the ornaments I made were just so good. I kind of fell in love with my own art. And I had children with friends, and they took turns looking like different people, so possessing objects. And really, they all really liked just one of the artifacts.